Hello and welcome to the StrongCast, where it is our goal to help you perform without limitations. We chat with athletes, experts, and innovators to get their insights on optimizing the movement experience. I'm your host, Dr. Neil Toussaint. Welcome to StrongCast, where we talk all things performance and longevity. I am joined by Meshach. What's up, bro? How's it going?
Yo, Neil. What's up? How you doing?
I'm
I'm doing
good.
well.
I'm
Busy.
good. Yeah, no, we're both doing a lot here. And that's what I want to talk to you today about and to share with the listeners. So for those of you guys who don't know, I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a second. But this is my NYC tricker brother. We hanging out a bunch in the, before pre-pandemic when I was living in New York. And I don't know the last time we hung out together and trained together. It's probably been at least a couple of years, unfortunately. I got to make it out there real soon. But I really wanted to talk about your just a lot of things, especially your page and how we're collabing and stuff. But first, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. My name's Meshach Rojas. Pretty sure we'll get into it, but I believe I'm here because my social media presence about this much, where I've been putting out a lot of like nutrition focused recipes, trying to give people alternatives so they can start living like a healthier lifestyle, if you have dietary restrictions, or if you just want to eat healthier or optimize performance, but you don't really know where to go. I've kind of spent a lot of time over the last few years just like Googling things, reading PubMed, YouTube, all of that. So
No,
yeah.
it's
And I'm
beautiful.
also a tricker, martial artist, taekwondo. So it's like that's kind of what got me into it, trying to optimize my performance. But I'm sure we'll get into that a little later.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's honestly, I would love to hear your origin story into tricking before we get into the page and everything. About this much for you guys listening. Check it out ASAP. Maybe at the end of this, so that because you're gonna get a lot of info here. But the page is beautiful. His Instagram is just so awesome. It has really actionable, like, hey, you got 3 ingredients. We can make a really healthy, beautiful meal that's going to fuel you as an athlete and everything. So that's really what we want to talk about. But yeah, first, how did you get into training, tricking, and martial arts and everything? Give me the origin.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing taekwondo since I was like 8. And for me, I'm sure a lot of us kind of share this. That's why we all seem to get along together. We're all pretty nerdy. So it's like Power Rangers, Street Fighter, Kung Fu movies. So it was always like, oh, I want to learn how to do all those cool moves. And spent like a lot of time doing Taekwondo. And maybe around 25 or 26 is when I actually one day was just like, you know what? Like, let me learn how to do some flips because I've always wanted to. And I had seen, it was actually, I think, Micah Carnes and Dallas Liu at some karate performance. And I was like, all right, like I've been seeing all these guys on YouTube. Let me just go take gymnastics classes. From there, started to get more confident with like backflips. And on the side, I would kind of do my own little martial arty, flippy stuff. And other people would notice and they'd be like, oh, like, what do you do? Come train with us. And then I slowly started getting more into the tricking community. Actually, that was at Chelsea Piers I was going to
Okay,
at that time. It
right.
was kind of right at the end of, like, I think when I started tricking, there was only like 1 or 2 dreadnoughts left.
Gotcha.
So it was like, I feel like when New York was starting to kind of fall apart, because it seemed like there was such a big community. And yeah, like everyone was going to Central Park, Aviator. I was driving like me, Lamont, Aaron, we would go to 5 Star like every Saturday from like 8 till midnight and just be
Those were the
like, yo,
days.
this is like, this is just happiness. Like I didn't know that kind of happiness was out there. I was like, it's like 25, 26. So previously before that, it was just, what bar am I going to go to this weekend? And I'd be texting people on Monday. And then it got to the point to where it's like, I don't even want to go to the bar. I just want to spend all Saturday like training. It's fun. It's good for you.
I feel that so hard. And yeah, I mean, those days were great. And so since then, how's your training been? Just curious, like how you've been going. How's the community out there now in New York?
Training's been well. For me personally, I think I'm a little older than some other folk. I'm 37. So it's also just been a lot of like life gets in the way now. So you can't train as much as you could before, when you could afford to just spend an hour and a half on public transportation to get to Aviator or something like that. And on a Sunday, like literally devoting 3 hours to traveling somewhere to be there for another 3 hours. So I think now it's been a lot more of just finding time that I can train and still work on other things. Like I still have a full-time job. I'm trying to grow about this much. I'm trying to condition, still trying to socialize. So there's so much involved. But it's nice because I've been noticing with the community here, like we have Brooklyn Zoo, that's been kind of, I guess, the hub for most trickers
For sure.
for like almost the past 10 years when it was Brooklyn Beast.
Yeah. True.
And there's like a whole younger generation now. Like there's kids that are just now turning 20 and 21, and they have that excitement and that energy that I remember used to be like, you're there and everyone's like, oh my God, you just did this, or like, try that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that the cycle continues. Like it never fully ends. There's always new, fresh blood that's excited and watching videos and out there wanting to do more.
Definitely. And I think the cool part too, and why I'm so excited, we'll tell you guys about the collab in a second, but why I'm excited to collaborate with you is just, yes, the cycle continues, but we get to be the part of it that we wanted to see when we started, you know? And that's what I really resonate with with your content, because it's like, wow, this stuff wasn't here, like, at all. You know, it was just like, oh, just Google like bodybuilding recipes that are nasty. It's like it's like, you know, chicken breast and broccoli, and like here, that's quote unquote healthy, you know. But you've taken it a huge step further. You know, you talk about anti-inflammatory diets, plant-based, gluten-free stuff for those who need that. Just high protein which is what we're kind of getting into in our collaboration and stuff. So kudos to you and respect for that. So yeah, tell me about This Much and how you started that and how you got that idea.
Yeah, about this much. Like, I feel like looking back on life, it's like a no brainer. Like, if you were to see my life, you would see how everything just kind of fit into play. But I would actually say what really had it had me start it was actually because of tricking. So like I said, I was about 26, 27, and I would train, and I wanted to train as much as possible. I was trying to go like 2, 3 times a week because those were the only days that you could do like an open session type workout. And I would just notice some days I'm a little sluggish. Some days I'm a little heavier. Some days I'm really energetic. Some days I'm just taking forever to recover. So I started just being like, okay, maybe there's more involved. So I initially just started like, let me get a little healthier. So like trying to really cut out added sugars, cutting out like eating fried food. Like if I got a really greasy cheeseburger for lunch that day and like French fries, and then I trained later, I just noticed I was off. So I started with that, drinking more water. And that kind of turned into a rabbit hole of just looking up more things like, okay, how can I exercise more? How can I recover quicker? And like I said before, it was like a lot of Googling, a lot of YouTubing. And then through finding all these different blogs, realizing blogs are kind of just random people out there with no credentials, it started to turn into like, okay, well, this is all very interesting. Let me go check PubMed real quick just to see if there's more involved or if this is just people repeating the same thing. So it's been a constant learning cycle. But ultimately, it was, I want to optimize my performance. I want to be able to train as much as possible. I want to be 70 and still able to like at least tie my shoe. Like I don't have to do a backflip at 70, but I want to be able to tie my shoe, climb stairs, just function how a human is meant to function. And then that kind of came into play with food. So like I've always enjoyed cooking and I've always liked to try making things in general. Like my mom raised me and my sister to cook once a week when we were younger. So I kind of learned basics of, okay, this is how you cook chicken. This is how you boil water, things like that. So as I started learning more about nutrition, I had heard about something called paleo. And that was probably the big, like, oh, I should try this kind of thing. And for those who don't know, paleo is kind of pretty similar to what I do now, just a lot more restrictive. But it's essentially cutting out all the processed junk, not really having too many starchy carbs, no added sugar, no preservatives, no dairy. Like you're trying to really eliminate things that are irritants for humans. and trying to eat food as close to its natural form as possible. So you're not really having a lot of gluten or grains because a lot of that is heavily processed. And depending on who you talk to, they say, it messes with your gut and how you digest food. So all of this started to kind of come into play. I liked food. I wanted to optimize my nutrition. I was just doing a whole bunch of researching. And through that, I just started to see like the direct impacts of everything. And it's like, oh, like, why do we drink Gatorade? Okay, to hydrate. Okay, well, what is it about Gatorade that's actually hydrating you outside of the water? Okay, there's sodium in there, but there's also potassium. What does potassium do? Okay, but they're also adding a lot of sugar. Why are they adding a lot of sugar? There's a reason for it. So it's just everything starts to, as soon as you learn one thing, you just realize, oh, there's so much more I don't even know. And then you kind of get in there and then it keeps growing and growing. And then also just one final thing, I also learned about the relationship to a lot of illnesses and diseases and diet. Like the top killers of humans, period, are like cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, and cancers. Not all cancers, some though are related to diet. Of course, plenty of people have strokes. That for most people is also related to diet.
Yep.
So it's not a guarantee to eliminate anything, but I just kind of wanted to share with others what I've learned about ways to prevent future illnesses. Cause I would hate for like the day that I'm 60 or 70 to be like, oh, you now have this terminal illness. And then at that time we find out, oh, but it was completely preventable 30 years ago if you just did this. So I'm playing kind of like taking a safer path. And I'm just trying to share that info with other people because I know a lot of people don't have the patience to Google as much as I do.
It's so sick because it's so parallel, I feel like, to how I came into this as well. Like really, honestly, it's pretty identical. And down to the researching on your own and just getting deeper into it and realizing how much bigger it is. And just realizing how you can actually optimize your life very easily. Like, yes, it was a lot of work to acquire that information, but by distilling it for people, now you're making it that much easier for them to get that info. But really, if you look at it as far as like, what do you have to do? It's very easy. Like all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff on your page is very easy to do. It tastes awesome. I've had a couple things. I think like I know we've been to, what was that place called? Seasoned Vegan, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like
I was in Harlem.
yeah. And then I don't know. I feel like I've been in your house before and had a couple things like a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like also I think with the vegan stuff,
Yeah.
like I think there's a lot of good things, but also like a lot of it has a lot of processed things. So that might not necessarily
Of
be best if
course.
you're trying to optimize certain
Right.
things. But yeah, I think it's opening your mind and trying new things. And then you realize like, oh, I've only been eating chicken and rice for my entire life and
Right.
broccoli. I didn't realize there were other things out there that also taste good.
No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's crazy how I don't want to make it a conspiracy theory, but really, I
Mhm.
mean, how the media and like corporations and the food industry make it very difficult to actually know what you need for your body. And that's why it becomes so confusing for people. People, go to the grocery store and 70-80% of the stuff is garbage, honestly. But it has like the green
Mhm.
leaf on it. Oh, this is healthy. Oh, this is good for you. And then meanwhile, you look at it, it's like 15 grams of sugar per serving, and
Yeah.
very little nutrition, very little protein.
I
So
think the biggest
yeah.
issue not even an issue, just I guess you could say kind of an annoyance is how people look at health and nutrition. Because when you actually flip a nutrition label around, it doesn't tell you anything really that useful. It just tells you kind of the macro breakdown, like protein, carbs, salt, fat. But even when it gets into the minerals, okay, some will say potassium. But if you just Google the nutrition profile of, I don't know, broccoli, you're going to see a lot more in there than what they would put on the nutrition label of a broccoli thing you buy in the store. So you actually don't really know how much of anything you're even getting. So it becomes hard to even measure. So it's like, that's kind of where this is also coming from. Cause I think there've been a lot of shocking numbers I've learned. And then when you start to do the math, you're like, oh, everyone's malnourished if this is the standard that we're supposed to be at. And yeah, like pretty much whenever I go food shopping, anyone who wants a hack, it's you just only shop in the produce and the meat section. Like that's kind of it. Like anything that comes in a box is probably gonna have some kind of crazy processing to it that's gonna strip it of all kinds of beneficial nutrients. Not everything, you can still find plenty of good products out there. But yeah, I think people need to just get more used to cooking and shopping in like the produce section, like grabbing more vegetables and things like that. And you'll notice something like that, hydrating. It becomes hard to tell if you start to feel better because you're not having all the junk, or if you're feeling better because you're finally getting nourished properly. I think there's a bit of both,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's hard to tell which one weighs in more. So it's like you just kind of do both by sticking to some basic rules. Like you were saying, it's simple once you learn the rules, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, that
It's not
plus
out there.
no. And the other part is that it's not as, or maybe even not painful at all for like people. I think the barriers to entry, are, and I want to break them all today. If you're down, is like,
True.
okay, this is expensive. This is hard to do. This is restrictive. This is not fun. I'm going to need to do a lot of research before I can learn how to do all of this. And I'm sure there's more, but I think that those are the main like barriers for people wanting to do some kind of to change their diet up to a more healthy, whole food based diet. So yeah, I mean, I think it'd be useful to maybe talk about the expenses first versus what the standard is, what people normally do versus like maybe how you shop or honestly how I shop as well, because I'm eating pretty similarly to what you're saying at this point as well.
Yeah. It's different for everyone. And it depends on your priorities. Like because I've learned so much, I almost equate this to smoking. Like I've never smoked like cigarettes, but I would never recommend, like if you want to go for it, but I would never recommend for someone else to do it. If anyone's like, how can I get healthier? It would be like, you probably shouldn't smoke. So I kind of see it like that. Like there are still some very basic rules to make this simpler. Like in general, and I'll go back to your question about the expenses. It's more about just prioritizing the right stuff and trying to look more at it like the longevity. This isn't something you're going to do just now and all of a sudden your life changes. This is something that accumulates over time, and you almost might not even realize some results until you fall off and you go back to like eating cinnamon buns every morning. And that's when you're going to be like, oh, I don't feel good. So I think that's something important to realize when you're talking about, well, it's too expensive. It's like, well, what does expensive big picture really mean? Like, does it mean you're not going to be able to live the quality of life you want? Does it mean you're not going to sleep well? Does it mean you might have more hospital bills or need more medication? Does it mean when you pay to go to a session, you won't be able to use that session to its full advantage and you're going to leave an hour earlier because you don't feel good? Like, I think it's not fair to just say money around it. But being that a lot of this is focused, like I said earlier, around just eating whole foods, like most foods aren't that expensive. Like think of it this way. I think for me, I think the ideal during workout food you could have is a banana. Like it's got plenty of potassium. It's got a bunch of other minerals. It's got carbs. It's got sugar. And how much is a banana? Like depending on where you live, of course. But for me, if I go to Trader Joe's, it's 19 cents each. So I can literally get for $1 a whole thing of bananas instead of spending however much I would have spent on like a sandwich at the deli or getting some takeout food or something like that.
Or even a
So I think it
pre-workout,
can be,
just comparing apples to
yeah,
apples. It's like bananas to bananas. I hate puns, honestly. But like a pre-workout, right? So if you're comparing it to the coffee or to the energy drink or something like that, and how well is that going to sustain your health over time? I mean, it's going to be
yeah,
cheaper and sustain your health better in the long run, I believe. But sorry, continue.
exactly. No, yeah, I feel like that's the main way I tend to look at it. And for me, because I personally value this more, I'm okay spending more on food. Like most of my money goes to food and travel. Like I want good experiences and I want a good like quality of living. Of course, that's also like going out. I do go out to restaurants and I eat food and I don't eat perfect all the time. But at home, yeah, like I'm paying a little extra to get like pasture raised eggs versus just the cheap eggs at the store, just because I know a lot more about other things. And it's not necessarily that this is now going to change my life. It's just I value the little bits that kind of come with that. But even then, like, I guess you can compare. A lot of people always think organic is healthy. Not necessarily. It just means the pesticides that they use are organic. So there's plenty of organic pesticides out there that are pretty harmful to us. So you have to learn a lot about how marketing and advertising is trying to trick you into buying some things and not others. And that's where you start to realize, like, okay, I can spend way more on this organic broccoli, which, yes, it's going to have more benefits, less likely to be GMO, all this other stuff. But realistically, in the big picture, me just buying broccoli, period, and eating that, even if it's not organic, is more beneficial than me worrying, oh, I have to get the organic broccoli. It's like, if the organic broccoli is too expensive for you, just get the regular broccoli. The point is, eat more of the whole foods, like sweet potatoes, more fruits, squashes. So yeah, don't get too caught up in the price. I'm pretty sure if anyone, I'm not saying to actually send me a list, but I'm pretty sure if anyone were to send me lists of like, okay, this is what I eat in a typical day, like I could probably respond to you fairly quickly with, okay, send me a picture of your grocery store. You can get these items instead of those. And you probably spent the same amount or less. The only difference is you have to prepare them or cook them. Like you can't just pick it up like a hamburger and start eating it.
So, in order to prevent mass DMs and in
Hmm?
order to provide more value in this podcast, would you like to just rattle off some staples that you get at the grocery store that you think are really
Yeah.
going to help complete that? It doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but just something that will help complete that profile. Because as you said, we're not even knowing what kind of nutrients are needed for a daily living performance, let alone performance. We're just talking about like daily requirements at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just right off the bat, not even considering if you're an athlete or you're trying to perform to a crazy level or anything like that. It's you want your macros, your carbs, your proteins, your fats. So I think carbs is the biggest thing a lot of people struggle with because everyone's used to rice, pasta, sandwiches, breads. But those are all highly processed. So carb alternatives that I tend to go for are things like sweet potato, quinoa, other squashes, gourds, tubers. And a big one that people always seem to forget is fruits. Like fruits are an amazing source of carbs. And the reason why these carbs are better than the carbs in, let's say, a cupcake or a piece of bread is that they come with their own natural fiber. So that kind of is how nature balances things out. Any carb you find out there is going to have fiber with it. And that allows your body to digest it better. It slows down how quickly the sugar gets into your bloodstream. So that's what makes that just better in general. So now that you kind of have carbs out the way, healthy fats, you can get healthy fat in most of your proteins. But if you really want to think about like the best fats, best olive oil, avocados, salmon, walnuts, flaxseed, all of those are higher in like the omega-3 fatty acids versus the omega-6, which we can get into that another time. But it's just these are nutrients that your body needs to function better. And there's a lot of links to like your brain health and just the quality of life you live, period. So you don't necessarily have to shop just for fats unless you're talking about like olive oil. For cooking, oil wise, I typically will use coconut oil or avocado oil. Just a quick reason why those are the closest to natural as possible. Those are cold pressed versus like most vegetable oils or corn oil or canola oil or sunflower oil. You can't actually get those through natural means. A lot of them have to be chemically extracted and then they don't have a good flavor. So then they have to add things to neutralize it. So yes, you have an oil that's cheap, but kind of at what cost? It's like your body's not digesting it well, and that's where you get a lot of the omega-6s from. I personally don't do dairy, but if you do dairy, um, I would probably say at least try to go pasture raised if you're talking about butter, grass fed, ghee. Those are just better sources of fat and dairy. For protein, again, up to you. I'm not vegan, I'm not plant based. I just strongly believe everyone needs to eat a lot more plants, fruits, vegetables. So that's why I push that more. But for me, I'm typically eating, and there's a Costco near me. So this becomes a little easier for me personally because I can get some of these in bulk. Wild caught salmon, again, if you can't afford wild caught, farm raised is still a perfect alternative versus eating a McDonald's hamburger. So salmon, you can do ground beef. I used to really like chicken thighs, but I feel like over the last maybe 5 years or so, I just got kind of bored of it. So I don't really do that anymore. Lamb, I really like the flavor in there. I know some people don't like the gaminess, but I think that's kind of the whole problem with our whole diet. We're not used to more of the subtle flavors in most foods because we're just shoved, like salt and sugar is just shoved down our throats. So we're not used to tasting other things. You want fatty fishes. So like, again, salmon, cod, you can get into your shellfish. Eggs I think eggs have every nutrient in them except for like vitamin C. Not like you can just eat eggs for the rest of your life and that's all you need, but just like it has a lot of stuff in there.
They're, I believe, the most bioavailable protein you can get. So it assimilates to your
And
body.
cheap too. Like you
Yeah,
can get
super cheap.
a whole carton for like $1 or $2. And each of those, that's 6 grams of protein. So there's a lot of little hacks you can do to, if you are trying to live on a budget. What else? I buy things in bulk. So fruits. So I think the top fruits that seem to be agreed upon for nearly anywhere you look are berries.
Yep.
Berries are lower in starch, higher in fiber, and just a lot of phytonutrients. Another quick rule, I feel like I'm going to be all over the place just because there's
That's
so
fine.
much. And every time I say something, it's going to like explode like a firework. And then it's like, oh yeah, there's 50 other things that I want to say about that. But anything that has really vibrant colors, those tend to be more nutrient packed foods. So that's another reason partially of why berries are so good for you. Like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, that deep color is coming from, I don't remember exactly what nutrient it is right now, so don't quote me, but sweet potato and carrots, the orange in there, even actually potatoes, banana, that whitish color, that's also associated to certain nutrients, the yellowish, the red in tomatoes and peppers. So something else to do when you are food shopping, if you're like, okay, I don't know what else to get, is just be like, okay, like taste the rainbow. Like, how can I get more colors onto my plate? Like, okay, I already have some greens, I have some whites and yellows. I need some like deeper colors. Let me get a red onion instead of a white onion. Like just ways to kind of switch up how you're going about things.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, I feel like if you're just sticking to the produce and just getting some basic protein in bulk, trying to get wild caught, pasture raised, grass fed if you can, just to avoid all the antibiotics and all the factory farming, that's gonna probably do better for you than standard Western diet.
Oh man, yeah, definitely. I like how you kind of put that at the end because yes, there are a lot of things that you could be considering, or you could just get a colorful plate and call it a day, and you're probably doing 90% better than what you were doing or what other like what the standard diet is, like you were saying. What's like the perfect plate? And we're speaking very generally, right? But I mean like as far as like the ratios, we talk about like, oh, ratios of like starchy carbs to leafy carbs to proteins. Like how do you organize your plate? I know that there's some ratios that people talk about. Like is there
Yeah.
something that you advise people or like what you do on your own?
This one can get very complicated because people are keto, people are vegan, people
Yeah.
are omnivore, carnivore. So that's where the macros shift around depending on what you go for. But I think overall, eat as many veggies as possible. You don't want too many starchy carbs because starch converts into sugar. And unless you're about to work out or you're recovering from a workout, you don't need all of that sugar. So if you're going to like, white potatoes are fine. A lot of people are afraid of potatoes, but they're high in potassium and they're a great source of energy. So if you're going to have potatoes, be like, okay, I'm working out later today. I'm going to eat some potatoes. But for the ratio itself, I wish I had a picture right now. I didn't make dinner yet, but when you see my plate, I stack like a giant bowl with just as much veggies as I can stomach. Like, I think a lot of people just put in like, okay, here's like a handful of spinach. It's like, no, like spinach is the entire plate. And then you have your protein on top of there. I think it depends on your protein goals, but it seems like most people want like 4 to 6 ounces, which is kind of like the palm of your hand. If you are going to have some starchy carbs, I would just not focus on them. Even if you're going to have pasta and white rice, I'm not saying those are evil. Don't ever have them, but just don't have as much as them. I think we have to flip it. We're used to a giant pile of rice or a giant pile of pasta or a giant sandwich bread with a little bit of meat and a little bit of veggies in there. And it should be the opposite. Like, really focus as much as you can on the veggies, and you'll see that you start to get full before you start indulging on all of the starchy carbs. Because I feel like this kind of gets into a bigger conversation where a lot of people are like, oh, I can't eat this. It's not that you can't eat that. It's focus more on the good and what you should be eating more of. And you'll see that you won't even be craving the other things as much because you'll be full. And most of your cravings are coming from nutrient deficiencies, or your body's asking for something anyway. So you'll just see over time, you'll start to get less of the cravings for just like 2 whole bagels because you're hungry. It's like there's other ways to fill yourself up. Like think about a box of cereal. We've all had cereal. I'm pretty sure we all could just house an entire box of cereal. If cereal was just unlimited, we would just keep pouring bowl after bowl after bowl. Now, how many apples or how many sweet potatoes do you think you could have, before you feel full? So it's just looking at it more like that. The processed stuff is easier to overconsume. So focus more on vegetables. Eat as much vegetables as you can, vegetables and protein, fruits. And then you can worry about sweets and carbs and starchy stuff as like an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was helpful or if I kind of went all over the place.
No, I think that was awesome. I like to add beans as well if you want more
beans
of
are a
that.
good source. Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
It's kind of like, that almost replacement for rice, or not replacement. And I think you said it perfectly. Like, we're not talking about demonizing any sort of food or anything. It's just what ratios are we eating things in? And we're eating maybe sometimes for enjoyment, which is fine, but long term, how are you going to feel? How are you going to perform? And et cetera.
Yeah.
So,
and real quick, even just like, I know everyone's so focused on weight loss. Everyone wants a 6-pack and everything. I feel like, unless there's new data, but I feel like conclusively it's already been determined that diet influences how shredded you'll be way more than if you work out or not. Like, it's 80% diet.
Oh yeah.
So like, you could not even work out that crazy, but if all you eat are just like whole foods, natural foods, plenty of water, you're getting good sleep, like, you're going to look very fit and you're just going to look a lot better than if you were working out a lot, but still eating like junk. Like, you see a lot of really strong people out there, but they still, you still have a gut. You still you see more of what a lot of people tend to concern themselves with. So it's just something else to keep in mind too. Like, diet has a bigger impact than we've been taught.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's why I'm like super excited. Before we get into the collab, actually, though, I'm glad you just brought that up, body composition, because I really wanted to talk about that. Because we talked about mainly like general diet tips, but now I want to get more into that performance kind of thing. And we don't have to get super into the weeds, but just generally, I think it sounds. So let's say, people watching this, some people might actually want to gain weight, gain muscle, gain size. And this might sound like that's going to be impossible because we're talking about just eating vegetables. And or it might sound like that we're talking about just eating vegetables, right? So I just wanted to clear that up and talk about different body composition goals real quick, and just like how would you, if you wanted to bulk up, if you wanted to gain a lot more muscle, because no one really wants to gain fat, I don't think, but people want to bulk up on muscle, right?
I'm sure
So
someone out there does.
yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right. So I mean, it might be
Yeah.
that might be the easiest thing to do then. I mean, back to the cereal. Um, no, but I'm sure there's healthier ways to even do that, right? So,
Yeah.
how would you advise somebody to bulk up or to build muscle with using their diet?
So I think for me, there was a point where I was trying to bulk up, and through again a lot of googling and research, I just realized I need to eat way more calories than I currently do.
Yeah,
Like like that's essentially what it comes down to: calorie deficit or surplus. So, and that's not just for losing weight, fat. That's for muscle gain as well. Like yes, protein matters, but if you're still not eating enough calories, you're not going to get that bulky growth that you might want. So I think the first thing before I would even like prescribe anything, because I don't want to prescribe, is you have to ask yourself more, what are my actual goals? Like, why do I want to bulk up? Is it because I think I'll look better? Or like I think I'll look more muscular? You can still look very muscular even with a smaller frame if you have a lower body fat percentage. So I think just taking some time to really think, do I actually want to get big? Or is there something behind the idea of big that is driving this? And then you can kind of approach it better, because it is definitely harder to eat a lot of calories. Like I think for me, I've always been pretty similar in weight, but I've never really had a crazy diet. But even when I was just looking into all these calculators, if I wanted to put on like 5 or 10 pounds of muscle, I was going to need to be eating like 3,000 calories a day. And it's like, that's just kind of miserable. Like I tried some weight gainer, I tried eating more. I just didn't feel good. I would have to be stuffed all the time. And I just kind of said, you know what, let me just focus on the basics. And if I'm training properly, my body will form into how it's meant to form, you know? Like people who are afraid that their chest isn't big enough, it's like, well, can you do an air planche push up on the rings yet? It's like, if not, maybe you're not strong enough yet to where your chest is where it ideally could be. But I think it is harder if you truly, after all of that, if you are still, I want to bulk up, I'm trying to get big, you're going to have to find ways to eat more calories. And that's where the starches kind of come into more play. Like, even if you listen to a lot of bodybuilders, they're eating a lot of white rice, a lot of mashed potatoes, because those don't have fiber. So they don't fill you up as much, or not much fiber. So you can actually eat a lot more of it and still feel hungry. So the trick there is find ways that you can eat more calories in a healthier calories that don't have all the extra processed junk in there, that you can just kind of sneak into your diet. So again, eating a lot more white rice, white potatoes, things like that. Oils are higher in calories. So a very simple thing, I think a tablespoon of most oils is like 100 calories or something like that. Tablespoon or teaspoon. I don't have the numbers in
Yeah,
front of me
yeah.
right now. So
Peanut
there's little
butter.
tricks you can do. If you're trying, yeah, peanut butter, almond butter. If you have
Shakes.
eggs for breakfast, let's say every time you have 2 eggs, you can add another egg in there, and that's a third egg. That's some more calories. So I think you just really have to focus on calories. Like Neil just said, you can start doing protein shakes. And yeah, smoothies, those are ways. Like I've actually broken down, I love a breakfast smoothie, but when I look at the actual calorie breakdown, that's probably the most calories I have in a day, because I'm putting like almond butter in there, chia seeds, flax seeds, nuts and seeds are very high in calories, again, because of the fats. On top of, also, if you add in like a whole avocado and like coconut milk, that's also kind of fatty. Like you'd be surprised, like a nice hearty smoothie could easily be at least 500 calories, where people often think smoothies are low calorie. That's only if you're doing only like vegetables and berries. But as soon as you get the other stuff, you're on your way up there.
Well, when I was adding oats to my smoothies, which was very recently, I just started doing very similar to what you were saying, very similar to the paleo. It's more that slow carb diet. I don't know if you've heard of that before,
Mhm.
but it's like, you're avoiding more of those grains and et cetera. So that shake was easily 1,000 calories,
Yeah.
easy. And now it's still
Yeah.
pretty up there, honestly, because I'm putting like two to three scoops of protein in there, scoop of collagen. So I'm like starting my day with like 50, 60 grams of protein.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where
And
it's at.
yeah, so yeah, I would definitely agree with drinking your calories is a good way if you're looking to bulk up, and then also not just doing the dirty bulk, because that usually doesn't go well. And like I said, most people's goal is not to gain an excess of fat, but just to build that muscle. So you don't need a crazy surplus to actually build muscle. You only need a
You just
certain
need a
amount
little
of
bit.
caloric surplus to do that. And where people run into the problem is like, okay, yeah, now I'm going to have to, okay, so now it's time to bulk up. So now I get to eat really terribly. And no, it really
Yeah.
should
Just like pizza,
still,
Oreos.
right. You can get the calories and they could be very satisfying or not, depending on if you're doing the, you know, drinking them versus, there's different ways to play with them. I just wanted to kind of tease that out because I think it's important for people to hear, especially if they're really trying to build muscle, that there's ways to do it in a healthier manner that doesn't
Yeah.
involve throwing out everything you said at all. It just adding more of it. And then if you're still having a problem or trouble eating all of that, then maybe just blending it up or adding some brown rice, white rice, some pastas, things like that,
Hmm.
to
And one
supplement
more
it.
thing there,
Yeah.
even I think, because I also do listen to a lot of bodybuilders just to hear their perspective on a lot of things. And even when they work with clients, one of the big things they say is you have to slowly get to where you're trying to go. You can't go from eating
Yes.
2,000 calories one week to 3,000 the next. Like, you're not going to be able to. So, okay, every day you're adding an extra egg and a tablespoon of olive oil. And then the next week you start upping that a little bit. And then eventually you get to the point to where, okay, now your body knows what's going on. You can do this a lot more consistently. So yeah, also just doing it smart. Don't just jump in and try to copy everyone else. Like, everything's a progression, whether you're tricking, weightlifting, learning. You don't just jump into something and then all of a sudden you're ready for it.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you put it in that way too. And we actually have a podcast. I think it was number 16 with Tyler Hubble, and he studies nutrition, and we broke it down as to how to up your calories in an intelligent way over week after week. And he said exactly what you just said, which is like, you're adding like 200 calories per week or something like that. It's not like, oh, I want to bulk up. And that's, that's the instant gratification. That's just not having the science. And that's what we're trying to do here today. Just give people the resources to know how to go about these things. Because the goals could be, they're great goals, like your goal is your goal. So achieve it, right? And that's what we're here to help you do. But doing it in an intelligent way where you're only adding like 200 calories a week versus trying to just be, Hercules in a month is not really going to work, and you're going to feel pretty terrible, and you're not
Yeah,
going to probably perform
100%.
very well. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, awesome. Awesome. So I wanted to move on to, just our collab, and I'm very excited for that. I think it's going to be so awesome. Again, if you guys get the chance by the end of this podcast, just go check them out on Instagram, about this much, about dot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it there.
Yeah, the Instagram about this much, but TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, everything else, I got the full about this much without the periods.
You'll just buy them out soon. Well, maybe not,
Yeah.
because actually you were just blowing up, dude.
Yeah.
So
I think
well,
people will find it. I'm sure if you just type it in, it should pop up, or just message one of us.
right, yeah, no, it won't be an issue. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about that for a second. You put out a video recently, right? So we were talking about this collab only about, a few weeks ago at most. And
Yeah, you've brought it up, I think, like a
yeah,
year or two ago, and
for
it's like we
sure.
should do something one day. But yeah, like 2 weeks ago, it was like, let's actually do this.
For sure. And at that time, I don't know, you were probably around like a little over
Oh,
10K,
like,
maybe like 13K or something like that.
yeah, like 14K
Yeah. And then
as of last week.
Yeah, literally. And you put out this video on, what was the recipe?
It was a sweet potato avocado toast. So it's like a gluten-free alternative to avocado toast, but just another way, again, to just swap out the bread for something that's going to give you more fiber, more nutrients. And yeah, people really seem to like that. That's been blowing up.
It's
Even right
crazy.
now, I'll check.
What's it
Like
at? Yeah, let us know.
it was at like 60K,
Oh, he's talking about his
but
followers right now. So it went from 14 to
oh,
60 with
the
yeah, the
thing it's
views. What are the views
the
at?
views, it's like 2.5 million already.
That's
I'm looking
insane.
right now.
So,
Yeah,
to those of you
2.5
guys,
million. So people like that. So I would say go eat that because everybody seems to like it.
well, that's what I was gonna say. To those of you guys listening, like, you're not alone in this. People are really trying to eat healthier and get alternatives. People want to find those answers, but when you go to the grocery store, it's not there. The answers aren't like on a silver platter for you. You have to go look for them. And that's unfortunate. So that's why I'm really excited to collaborate with you, because what we're going to do on the app is have a bunch of nutritional content. We actually already have 3 up right now. We have a 2 high protein meals. One's more on the quick and easy side, and the other's more of like a dinner. So we put the fried rice with the tuna, eggs, avocado, and then the other one was like the chicken and squash
Yeah,
meal,
like
right?
spaghetti squash or
Spaghetti squash,
something.
that was right, right. And then we have a homemade electrolyte as well already up on the app. And we're going to do so much more. I want to
Yeah.
have a good amount of recipes up there with your
And
content and everything.
just real quick, cutting you off, I do
No
plan to
worries.
also get plant-based alternatives in there. Just for now, we're just slowly releasing some things. So don't worry. I got you guys, the vegans out there.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because we're going to cover all these categories, right? We're going to cover electrolytes even, which is maybe surprising for people. It's like, oh, we don't have to buy these packets. Like, you can actually make it at home with simple ingredients and get everything your body
Hmm.
needs. I think that's not only very hype, but that's also a money saver for a lot of people too. You got to see, like, okay, maybe the one thing you're buying is slightly more expensive yet, but overall in the picture of things, like, I think that in the grand scheme of things, that this is cheaper, healthier, more satisfying. And if you meal prep, it can take less time than going out to get something to eat every time. So I mean, I just feel like it's a no-brainer. It just takes a little bit of effort. But really, I don't think any of us are strangers to that.
Yeah,
so we
agreed.
got right. So we got electrolytes. We got pre-workouts coming up, right?
Yeah, post
Um,
workouts, recovery stuff. If you tend to get really sore, we've got some things for that. And yeah, just ways to stay fueled. And even during your workout, just other ways to, okay, what can I have? Like, quick little preview. You don't really want a lot of protein or fat when you're working out because that takes longer to digest. So you want to focus more on carbs. So, what are some carb focused snacks or beverages I can have during a workout so I all my resources go towards working out, not towards digesting the proteins and the fats.
right. Yeah, and that's what I love about it, because it's all evidence based. I mean, you've done a lot of extensive research on not only your own body, just seeing how things have changed for you and for people near you, but also like through literal research of PubMed and systematic reviews, meta-analyses, like trying to see like what actually helps fuel the human engine the best it can.
Yeah.
And
And
then
disclaimer, I'm not a scientist, so I read PubMed how I can.
right.
I'm sure plenty of people will criticize, well, you have to read it like this, but still, yeah, even then, there still is so much out there.
Look, I mean, I think it's just a no-brainer as far as like the work you've put into it, and then also into the way that you've made it very presentable and accessible to people is just really awesome. So I advise everybody to go check out the page and to go look at our recipes on the app, because that's going to be more geared towards the athletic needs. So we talk a lot about basic needs and a little bit about performance, but just with the intra workout, for example, like there's things that we can be doing to optimize. Like, it's not only about what you eat, but sometimes it's about when you're eating it and how you're
Yeah.
eating it and how you're preparing things. And so we're trying to take the guesswork out for you guys and just be like, oh, I need a pre-workout meal. Let me go check out the TrickStrong app and see what Meshach put up for me this week. And then you're going to eat some delicious food. So yeah, no.
Yeah. And I think opening your mind, like what you are more aware of, you're going to start to focus more on. Like at first it's a little overwhelming, but like one quick little fact I like to always throw out there when I'm talking to people about how malnourished we all are, even when we do make these efforts, is if you just look up the US guidelines on micronutrients that all humans should be having to remain healthy. One of them that really stuck out to me was potassium. And you need 4,700 milligrams of potassium in a day. Now, to put that into perspective, a banana is about 400 milligrams. An avocado, I think, is also like somewhere around 3 or 4. A white potato is like 9. So seeing that, like my jaw really just dropped. And it's like, oh, even if I am having Gatorade and all these other supplements, a lot of them aren't even giving you enough of what's recommended just to be a healthy human, period, let alone what you lose when you sweat. So that's another reason to just, even if you're not going to be cooking everything, to still just be a little aware. Like I feel like you can still learn from this, because then you at least can make smarter decisions when you do shop for stuff or when you do look for other, even if you're eating processed things, you can at least be like, okay, well, let me just get this one because it has like 200 more milligrams of potassium and I'm still 4,000 away, but at least I'm a little closer than if I got that one, you know?
No, I couldn't agree more. And I actually just looked at my screen and I realized the light's off because we had the sun available to us a little bit ago. So sorry about that, guys. That's really funny.
Insane.
Let's see. Okay, you guys could probably see me again now. Jeez. Um, I've just been so focused on what you've been saying and everything. But yeah, just closing out, do you have any two things? First, do you have any tips for anybody trying to combine their passions? Because that's something that I've seen you've also really done well, is like you have a passion for training, you have a passion for nutrition, you've kind of combined them into about this much. So I know a lot of people listening have multifaceted interests. And so, yeah, how have you done that? And do you have any tips for anyone wanting to do that?
Yeah. You're talking like getting on social media and
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't
influencing,
have
or
to be.
just
It
in
doesn't have to
general, just
be.
in life, period?
Yeah,
Okay.
just in life. Yeah, I mean, not everyone's going to want to be a content creator or anything like
Yeah.
that, but just I think it's a big hurdle to realize that you can actually combine your passions and do what you want. And I think that that's
Yeah.
also showing in your work too.
What is do you know the term? There's a Japanese term for that. Is it like
Ikigai.
ikigagi? Ikigai. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think that's a pretty good guide of like essentially Venn diagram. It's like,
for
what am I
sure.
good at? What do I like to do? What do people need? And at first, you're not going to know, but you just kind of fill stuff in. And I think just taking breaks from your day to day, like I think the more your head is down in whatever your day to day grind is, the less you're going to be likely to think about stuff. That's why people always say you get your best ideas in the shower, because you don't have something distracting you. No cell phone, no one's talking to you. You're just in there, your mind is wandering. So I think it's good to have some exploration time where you're not doing anything. Like maybe you go for a walk, or you literally just sit down and look at a candle for a little bit, just to really get you to think a little bit more. So I think a lot of people just have ideas, but don't really think, how can I do this? And then once you kind of have some ideas, you can reverse engineer it. Like, I don't know, if you want to be a NASCAR driver, you, okay, what do NASCAR drivers do? They drive fast cars. Okay. How does one go from being a regular amateur driver to a NASCAR driver? Okay. And ultimately, you'll break it down to steps that you can do every day or every week or every month that are going to help you get towards your goal. Like, I feel like don't just focus on what that passion is. It's focus more on the steps that you can do that are using that passion and getting you there. Because I'm pretty sure you'll agree, Neil, like it's not, you never end. You're not just there one day and you're like, all right, I did it. Now what? Like you really have to enjoy what you're doing. So that way you keep doing it and you don't get burnt out and you don't get upset when you're not getting a certain result. Like it's not so much about the result. It's, I enjoy doing this. I see value in this. I just want to do this. So kind of that, set up a plan and don't be afraid to get out there and start doing it. Like I only got into tricking, which then snowballed into me doing this whole food content and health page because there was that one day I had already seen plenty of parkour and extreme martial art videos on YouTube. And that one day watching Micah and Dallas, it was like, you know what? Tomorrow, I'm just going to Chelsea Piers to take gymnastics. Like, yes, I wanted to be able to do rises and corks and all that, but ultimately it was like, I just need to learn a backflip. Let me just go get comfortable with that. So like, what's it? Jordan Peterson, he's always like, scale back the dragon. Like whatever that giant thing is, keep scaling it down until it's something that you can work on today or tomorrow.
Dude, I love it. I love it, man. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And everybody will be seeing a lot more of you because we're going to be in the kitchen. I was going to say in the lab, but
Yeah, I'm excited because this
stuff.
is something I've wanted to put out more content around this because this is kind of what got me into it. And I've always felt like, oh, one day I'll get more into that fitness realm of it. But this is kind of the same thing. It's like, well, what's been stopping me? And like, you want it as well. So it's like, yeah, let's just do this and see what happens. We're going to pivot as we see what people want and what their needs are. And then, yeah, hopefully we can at least help educate and change some lives out there.
Absolutely, bro. Yeah, that's how beautiful collabs go, right? We have two ends. One person wants one thing, one person wants one thing. And hopefully it becomes better than both of those things. And I know it will. So I'm really hyped. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, thank you.